All right. So, Corey, let's jump into it. First off, thanks for jumping onto this podcast and having the willingness to pour back into other real estate agents who might hear this and inspire them to really go out there and fight for their goals. So, first and foremost, I appreciate you jumping on.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on. It's a big honor to be here.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So, why don't we start off with just telling the audience, where do you actually sell real estate? And how long have you been licensed?
So I live in Northern California. I live in Redding, to be specific. So it is a smaller community. But I've been licensed for almost 3 years. May will be 3 years that I got my license.
Got it. And have you been full-time the entire time, or were you part-time at first and then got full-time later?
100%. So I had got laid off during COVID. From my previous job, I sold new construction. So I didn't need a real estate license because I wasn't selling actual properties, just selling, floor plans to build on people's lots. So I had that for like 6 years, but then got laid off and got into selling real estate along with my wife.
Oh, very cool. So yeah, you guys work together, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, super cool. All right. So here's what I want to do. I'd like to break down, Corey, kind of what things look like before we started working together, because we haven't been working together that long, right? I mean, how long has it actually been now?
I was looking at it when I joined, and it was February 21st.
Yeah. So really just a couple of months that we've been doing this. So first off, let's talk about, your lead generation strategies, or how you approach getting clients as a newer real estate agent before you and I started working together. What were some of the things you've tried? What were some of the challenges and struggles that you were facing?
So beforehand, I really didn't know how to get leads. I would see people getting listings, and I was like, how are they getting them? It's like, okay, well, time in the business equals more referrals and sphere of influence and all that. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's not happening yet. So up front, signed up for online referral sources, just taking buyer leads, taking everything that I could get, and working those. So the first, 2.5 years of my career, 2 years of my career were focused solely on buyers, because that was really, all I knew how to get.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. I mean, I think that's how a lot of agents get into the business, is kind of what you just first said. They don't actually know that they're getting into what we would call or would consider a direct sales business until they're in it, which has its own challenges. Meaning my belief, Corey, is that when people think about getting into the real estate business, certainly there's a lot of excitement because of the potential freedom of schedule, right? Working for yourself, the unlimited opportunity to make lots of income. I mean, these are just some of the things that draw so many people into this business. But it's not until later that they understand, well, just because you get licensed doesn't mean that all of a sudden the people that you know are just going to start calling you, say, come sell me a house. Is that what you experienced? Was I thought it was one thing, and then I got into the business and found out it was a completely different thing?
Well, seeing my wife in it for a while, I knew that it wasn't just, direct inbound like everybody's calling you now, but it was just a matter of really learning how to get in front of people. That's the biggest thing. How do I get in front of people to get their business? Because nobody, once you got your license, sweet, now what?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, so let's fast forward to what things are like right now. All right. So first off, I guess, let me ask you this. What had you want to get into a coaching relationship with me in the first place?
Well, I think I went down the same rabbit hole that a lot of people went down after watching multiple videos, is that, you start looking up online, okay, I learned about dialers. That was a new thing to me. I didn't even know that, dialers existed. So then I started researching it, and then that's when I stumbled, on your videos regarding Vulcan. So then I started watching those videos. And that was what really inspired me to get on with you, is seeing all the content that you put out. And okay, this is the tip of the iceberg. I want to get down into the meat and potatoes of everything, because getting to coach with you is kind of like just going and sitting with an experienced agent. He's basically laying out the playbook and saying, this is what I've been doing. And that's really what doesn't exist in a competitive market.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's get into that playbook, right? Let's kind of open that up a bit and talk about what you've been learning. So first off, we really focus on three areas of the business primarily, right? We focus on lead generation, lead conversion, and then client acquisition. So I'd like to talk about it in those terms. So first off, what are you doing now from a lead generation standpoint that's allowing you to generate more opportunities for yourself than you were before?
So beforehand, it was just, like I said, just inbound, buyer leads that you got to pay for. So once I got into prospecting, that really is like, okay, this is something that I can really get into. I don't mind being on the phone, but getting into the coaching has taught me how to, increase my skills on the phone, handling objections. Not that I'm perfect yet, but there's so much that you've taught as regards to the phone call process that really just helps out. So a lot of just outbound, phone calls, just calling expireds, done circle prospecting around active listings or listings that went pending really fast. So there's a lot of activity in a high sought after neighborhood. So that's what I've been doing.
Let's break that down for a second.
Okay.
Let's stay there for 1 minute. So we that's a hard thing what you're doing, right? Most agents have a passive approach to lead generation. It's a waiting game. They're waiting for their sphere of influence. They're waiting for another marketing company to give them leads that they can buy. They're just waiting for business to come in. I've asked you to take a proactive approach to your lead generation and have you be the one to go out there and initiate conversations with what we would call your ideal client avatar, which is homeowners who would want to list and sell their home so you can build a listing-based business. Corey, that's a very difficult thing. How are you able to overcome maybe some of the fears or insecurities to start doing outbound prospecting when so many agents have a hard time with it?
Lots of things that you've said. There's the idea of disconnecting from the outcome. Like, they don't know me. So they're saying no to the idea of me as a realtor. They're not saying no to me. They're not rejecting me as a person. So just really disconnecting from that. And being fine with it, knowing that not everybody I call. So even though I may make hours of phone calls in one day, maybe I don't get anything that day. But knowing obviously it's a numbers game. So you're working through getting through that process. So really just, like I said, disconnecting from the outcome and knowing that eventually something will turn over. If I don't do the work, then nothing's going to happen.
Yeah. So do you have any of your ratios that you can break down to give the audience like an idea of, this is how much prospecting you're doing. This is how many leads you're getting. This is how many appointments you've been setting, to give the audience some context, because you've only been doing this for a couple of months, right?
Yeah.
And so you're coming out of a world where you are waiting business to find you. Now that you've been out there initiating your own business, what does that look like recently?
So I don't have the exact numbers because tracking is still something that I'm working to implement. I track my closed data really well.
Yeah.
So I know exactly where my income is coming from as far as what source it's coming from, down to a very finite detail. But tracking my daily business is something that I'm really been struggling to implement, but I want to, so that I know, like, okay, I spend X amount of hours. But since I've joined the class, we've taken on 4 new listings in the 2 months. And what happened with that is it gave the way you broke down the process of building the presentation, that really gave me the confidence to go in to the presentation knowing what I needed to say, like sending out the expireds, closed and solds, or the expireds, closed and pendings the day before the listing presentation. That really, gave the sellers information as far as like, wow, this is what's been going on. Maybe my price that I'm thinking is, not accurate.
Sure.
And so then going on the presentation, like, you have the agenda setting process and then handling the days on the market. So all of that stuff has really helped me to build confidence in the presentation to then make the phone calls.
That's exactly right. And that's such a really good point. So you've been able to get the 4 listings in the last 60 days, all through outbound prospecting, converting people that you don't know and that they don't know you, correct?
One of them was a previous client, so it was a past client that I'd sold a house to. But the other ones, just staying in touch, making sure that I'm following up with these, interested sellers that had no idea who I was to begin with.
Yeah.
Some of them through expireds, some of them through circle prospecting. But just working with seller leads.
And that's the power of really mastering the skills of outbound, because you never have to worry about where your next deal is going to come from. You never have to worry about how are you going to go out there and get a client, because that uncertainty is something that I think a lot of agents really worry about. But when you're playing offense and you're the one initiating the conversation, it just comes down to what you just said. Are you willing to actually do the work? Because if you are, you're going to get the result. So let's stay here on the prospecting conversation for just a second. Let's talk specifically sales skills and maybe one or two things that you've learned in the last 2 months that's helped you have these conversations to turn those conversations either into a lead or into an appointment. Are there some specific skills that you've learned that has helped you to have confidence when you're having these conversations?
Yeah, I really like, you breaking down, what a lead is, because I felt like I fit into the category of like, just like, oh yeah, I had a good conversation with this person, but there was no appointment setting, conversation at all. It was like, hey, do you mind if I follow up with you? And that was where I was at before, but realizing that that's nothing. So getting through the script of, do they have a reason for selling? What's their timeline? And then your scripts with setting an appointment, doesn't make sense. Yeah. And then just the whole idea of like, I'm always trying to find, I'm going in with the no question, trying to get them to, no, I do want to do this. It does make sense. Yeah. So I really appreciate that aspect of selling, as opposed to just kind of like you say, bulldoze through a conversation and force something where there really is nothing.
Yeah, you're learning how to communicate in a way that would pull someone in versus push somebody away. And you're still in the process of learning that, right? You've only been doing this for 2 months. And so you're still in the process of learning how to structure questions with no orientation. You're still learning how to formulate questions to uncover real motivation to determine someone's need. So you know the difference between a qualified lead and an unqualified lead. And so all of that makes it more clear as you're having these conversations to get clarity on taking that prospect through the sales funnel. So let's transition into lead follow-up, and then we'll get into the listing presentation. So when we look at lead follow-up, I think this is another big issue for a lot of agents where they really, really have a lot of holes in their business and they're losing a lot of opportunity. Are you finding that your opportunities as of recently are coming more from lead follow-up versus lead generation? And if so, how do you approach, or what's your opinion of how important lead follow-up is?
Lead follow-up, even from my previous job, that was such an important thing that they always, hammered in. And getting into the system, first, knowing what a lead is helps to know where to put that lead.
That's right.
Who they are. So how often do I stay in contact with them? So yes, that has helped. A previous listing that we just put on the market, it was an expired from back in December, made some follow-up, touches after a good conversation and just stayed in touch without forcing anything on her. And then she ended up reaching out to me and we got the listing, and she's also a local buyer. So I would have never gotten that. And that was the listing appointment. That was my first appointment after being on the program. And it was just like the appointment was a breeze. Like me and my wife left, just like, wow, I can't believe it was that easy. Yeah. It was great. Go ahead. Well, just working with people, okay, this was a person that I can see myself working with up front, because then you have conversations with people. It's like, you don't got to take everything, because I don't think we're going to be a good fit.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And so, let's talk about that presentation specifically. You went on the first presentation after learning, because that's one of the first things that we do when we start to work with an agent, right? Is we really focus on the listing presentation first. What were some of the big changes that you learned that you implemented right away versus what maybe you and your wife were doing before that made these presentations so much easier for you? What was it?
So setting the agenda was big, because before we would just kind of more or less jump into the presentation, because we had watched a video of yours in the past, and it was probably years ago of you sitting in an appointment with some people in your office, and so that was like, okay, this is the layout of a presentation. So we had put in to practice some of that, but maybe not all of it. But setting the agenda was really a big thing. That was just going through that so they know this is what we're going to be doing with those soft questions that, take objections basically from the end of the presentation. Because
That's
by the
right.
end of the presentation, they know that we're going to be working to sign a listing agreement, as opposed to getting there and say, like, what do you think? You
Yeah,
ready to
yeah.
sign?
That's great. So really setting the agenda at the beginning of the appointment for you and your wife, it makes it a lot easier because it really takes the pressure off of you and the seller because we lay out this foundation or this expectation of how this meeting will go. And it makes everybody at the appointment just kind of be able to breathe easy and have confidence in, okay, we know exactly what to expect. Is that what you're finding?
Yeah, exactly. And then not getting lost in the weeds of comparables. Like
Yeah,
before, I would like, here's 7 listings that all sold, and we go through and look at all the photos, and then like you said, everybody gets kind of like stuck on looking at the home itself, and like, oh no, my countertops are better than that,
that's
or
right.
whatever, and you just get lost in that spot for a long time, and it becomes this awkward, where the seller's not really even interested in it. But just having like, okay, here's three comps of solds, expired, and pending.
Yeah.
So that's, or actives. So that's really good too, because then it just, with sending the listings the day before, then it made that part a much smoother process.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite part of the listing presentation? In other words, do you find that, and I'll just throw some out there, like the days on market presentation or price bracketing or the active listing analysis or the value proposition presentation, all the things you've been learning, do you have a part of the presentation that you say to yourself, I can't wait to get to this point because I feel like this really sets me apart from my competition?
Well, I think setting the agenda is really, just laying the foundation. And then we always have really liked just discussing days on market, because
Absolutely.
that's a big thing with people. And then just having them, verbalize the questions. Like, what do when you see a home that's 100 days on the market, if you're the buyer, what kind of offer are you going to make?
That's right.
Versus like day one, what kind of offer are you going to make? So we
Yeah.
don't want to be that 100-day, home.
Yeah.
So that's really helped out, and just I love that part. And then it
Yeah.
just makes it so much easier to get to the end.
Yeah, mine too. When I'm at a listing appointment, my favorite part is also the days on market presentation. I feel like it makes the biggest impact on the seller that they realize it's real transference of knowledge. It really positions you as a real expert because we talk a lot about, hey, provide value at the listing presentation. Everyone's heard that, but it's like, well, what does that mean? Provide value. We hear those words 1,000 times a day. Well, what we mean by providing value is the transference of knowledge so that the sellers can have these aha moments that position someone like you in the eyes of the seller to say, this guy's a real expert because of the way we tell the story during that days on market presentation, which is also my favorite part. So as we look ahead, with again, you're still crafting this new skill, but as you look ahead, as you and your wife start to think about future goals, what do you guys think is possible? What is it that you guys feel is in the reach in the near future for you as far as goals go?
I mean, well, I had come into the year, I did make a business plan. We had a dollar figure that we were looking to make, and then using your calculators to figure out like, okay, how many, what do I have to do per month, per week, per day. So we're on track, to reach the goal for the year.
Nice. What was the goal?
The goal was 250.
Awesome, man. That's great.
And so like at this point, we've closed 12 transactions in the first quarter. So we have, pending and active listings coming up as well.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
we're doing good. And especially I love being a part of the class now with the changes that are coming down the pipe, for real estate. It's like at first this is a very nerve-wracking thing. And then,
Sure.
just taking more listings and getting involved, it's helping to build confidence to be prepared for the future.
I love it. I love it. So let me ask you this. You go back and get your license 3 years. You go back 3 years, get your license all over again. What would you do differently knowing what you know now?
Well, I remember when I got my license, somebody suggested getting coaching. And so that was a big thing. And I would definitely agree with getting coaching to begin with, because otherwise you're just kind of like, bobbing in the water trying to swim. And, this has been a lifeboat, in the world of real estate. So being able to jump into that, focusing more on getting listings, outbound calls. That was something that I heard from in the beginning as well. Like, okay, calling expireds, but really making that a main focus of outbound calling. because that's really kind of just changed the business. And it's, when you're in business, other business opportunities present themselves as well.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Being busy helps with everything else. Other people that see that and then, okay, well, yeah, let's give them a call.
Yeah, I love it. What do you think holds agents back from trusting themselves enough to invest in themselves to get into coaching? Or better yet, what took you so long? What took you 3 years to have enough confidence to say, okay, I actually willing to surrender to a coach, make the investment, part ways with a lot of money to invest in coaching? What was it that held you back and then finally got you over the hump to do it?
So what held me back? Just that initial cost. Like it takes money to make money. So
got it.
Just realizing and then seeing that there's probably a lot more that I need to learn to help release the potential of future income.
Do you ever look at it? And I'm curious, right? And I don't know if I've ever even asked somebody on a podcast. The way I look at this too is there is a cost of inaction. In other words, there's a price to be paid to get what you want. And if you don't pay that price, by not doing it, it actually costs you more. So let me explain. So I don't know if you and your wife ever thought about this. I don't know if you've been making $250 for the last 2 or 3 years since you've been in this business. No? Okay. So in other words, Alex Hormozy calls it the ignorant tax. So by not investing in coaching from day one, when an agent thinks it's really expensive, they don't do it, and therefore they don't get the result they want. In this case, we're talking about $250,000 that you're going to earn. So you went the last 2 years not earning the $250. And so let's just say you earned $100. I don't know what you earned the last 2 years. So it costs you maybe $100. How much did you earn last year or the year before?
I think last year we were right around 200.
Okay. So let's just
the year before around 175 maybe.
All right. So call it
before everything. Yeah.
So yeah, before expenses all, even call it 200, right? So after coaching, you go to 250 or 300. It costs you $50,000 a year not to be in coaching. You ever think about it that way? This is the cost of inaction. And so I think about this too, because I really look at this seriously every day, right? The best investment being in one's own skill development. And so every time I generate income, I'm saying, how do I use this money to invest back into myself to level up my skill? And so it's amazing that you've just been, I don't know if you've been in a coaching relationship before, but yeah. So if you look ahead at the skills that we're going to develop together, and now you've earned this new skill set that generates X amount of dollars more than you were before, it's something I think about all the time, Corey. I just didn't know if you've ever thought about it in those terms.
I didn't think about it in that way. So that definitely is. I've missed out on X potential income because of not getting coaching, because of the fear of that cost.
Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, listen, thank you. Truly. I mean, you just because you did this podcast and you tell your story, it's like I told you before we hit the recording. Other agents will watch this and it will give them the confidence to say, wow, I was just like Corey. I'm buying leads and I'm working with mostly buyers and I'm not in control. And then they watch your story and say, I can do this. If Corey can do it, I can do it. And so I'm going to thank you for the rest of the real estate agents who will watch this. And I truly mean that. We appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to watching you continue to grow in the community. And we can't thank you enough.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Yep. We'll talk to you soon. All right, Corey?